Hello boys and girls. Hope you're having a wonderful Tuesday. Good news, we do have spring break and it officially starts on Friday. So starting Friday and all of next week, you don't have any work to do. You can tell your parents you have no schoolwork to complete because you all deserve a break. You have been working so hard. I am so proud of how amazing you have been doing. And all the things that I'm seeing online, I'm seeing lots of people who are working really hard and trying their best. If you see this video either today, Tuesday, or tomorrow, Wednesday, or even Thursday morning, don't forget we're having a Google Meet on Thursday. It'll be at 3 o'clock. So that's Thursday, I believe the 9th. So today's the step, yeah, Thursday the 9th. So we're gonna have a Google Meet at 3 o'clock on Thursday. And yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So recently, it was a little bit back in March, but it became springtime, and you know, around springtime, we see lots of animals coming back out because it's getting warm again. We see flowers blooming, we see all different kinds of things, and we especially see more bunnies. So I thought I could read the tale of Peter Rabbit to you today. Now, if something is a tale like this, not like a dog's tail, like T-A-L-E, we usually know that it's fiction. It's not real. And we can look at this picture and tell that this isn't real because this bunny is wearing clothes in this picture. So we know that bunnies don't really wear clothes, but they do come out in the springtime. So I want you to know the tale of Peter Rabbit. Once upon a time, there were 4 little rabbits, and their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. They lived with their mother in a sandbank underneath the root of a very big fir tree. I had a rabbit named Peter Cottontail because of this book when I was little. "Now, my dears," said old Miss Rabbit one morning, "you may go into the fields or down the lane, but don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Your father had an accident there, and he was put in a pie by Mrs. McGregor. Now run along and don't get into mischief. I am going out." Then old Miss Rabbit took a basket and her umbrella and went through the wood to the baker's. She bought a loaf of brown bread and 5 currant buns. Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail, who were good little bunnies, went down the lane to gather blackberries. But Peter, who was very naughty, ran straight away to Mr. McGregor's garden and squeezed under the gate. First he ate some lettuces and some beans, and then he ate some radishes, and then he felt a little sick, and he went to look for some parsley. But at the end of a cucumber frame, who should he meet but Mr. McGregor? Mr. McGregor was on his hands and knees planting out young cabbages, but he jumped up and ran after Peter, waving a rake and calling out, "Stop, thief!" Peter was most dreadfully frightened. He rushed all over the garden, for he had forgotten the way back to the gate. He lost one of his shoes in the cabbages, and the other shoe in the potatoes. After losing him, he ran on 4 legs and went faster, so that I think he may have gotten away altogether if he had not run into a gooseberry net and got caught on the large buttons of his jacket. It was a blue jacket with brass buttons, quite new. Peter gave himself up for lost and shed big tears, but his sobs were heard by some friendly sparrows who flew to him in great excitement and implored him to exert himself. Mr. McGregor came up with a sieve, which he intended to pop on the top of Peter, but Peter wiggled it out just in time, leaving his jacket behind. So Peter did get out. He got away from Mr. McGregor. He rushed into the tool shed and jumped into a can. It would have been a beautiful thing to hide in if it had not had so much water in it. Mr. McGregor was quite sure that Peter was somewhere in the tool shed, perhaps hidden underneath a flower pot. He began to turn them over carefully, looking under each one. Presently, Peter sneezed. Mr. McGregor was after him in no time. He tried to put his foot on Peter, who jumped out of a window, turning over 3 plants. The window was too small for Mr. McGregor, and he was tired of running after Peter, so he went back to work. Peter sat down to rest. He was out of breath and shaking with fright, and he had not the least idea of which way to go. Also, he was very damp from sitting in that water can. After a time, he began to wander about, going lippity-lippity. Not very fast, just looking around. He found a door in a wall, but it was locked, and there was no room for a fat little rabbit to squeeze underneath. An old mouse was running in and out over the stone doorstep, carrying peas and beans to her family inside the wood. Peter asked her the way to the gate, but she had such a large pea in her mouth that she couldn't answer. She only shook her head at him, and Peter started to cry. Then he tried to find his way straight across the garden, but he became more and more puzzled. Presently, he came to a pond where Mr. McGregor filled up his water cans. A cat was staring at some goldfish. She sat very, very still, but now and then the tip of her tail twitched as if it were alive. Peter thought it would be best to go away without speaking to her. He heard about cats from his cousin, little Benjamin Bunny. He went back towards the tool shed, but suddenly, quite close to him, he heard the noise of a hoe. Scritch, scratch, scratch, scritch. Peter scuttered underneath the bushes. But presently, as nothing happened, he came out and climbed upon a wheelbarrow and peeped over. The first thing he saw was Mr. McGregor, hoeing onions. His back was turned toward Peter, and beyond him was the gate. Do you think Peter's going to make it out? Peter got down quietly off the wheelbarrow and started running as fast as he could go along the straight walk behind some blackcurrant bushes. Mr. McGregor caught sight of him in the corner, but Peter didn't care. He slipped underneath the gate and was safe at last in the wood outside of the garden. Mr. McGregor hung up a little jacket and the shoes for a scarecrow to frighten the blackbirds. Peter never stopped running or looked behind him until he got home to the big fir tree. He was so tired that he flopped down on the nice soft sand floor of the rabbit hole and shut his eyes. His mother was busy cooking. She wondered what he had done with his clothes. It was the second little jacket and pair of shoes that Peter had lost. I'm sorry to say that Peter was not very well during the evening. His mother put him to bed and made some chamomile tea, and she gave a dose of it to Peter, 1 tablespoon to be taken at bedtime. But Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail had bread and milk and blackberries for supper. So, remember this was a tale, so we know that it was fiction. But that also tells us that this is like a folk tale. So that means that there is a lesson to be learned in this story. So our main character, Mr. Peter Rabbit, learned something. What do you think Peter learned in this story? Comment down below, or you can send me a message on Dojo, whatever you would like to do. You can comment on my post on Dojo. But what was the lesson that Peter Rabbit learned in this story? He learned a very important one that we should all remember. I love you. I miss you. I can't wait to see you. And I hope I get to see you on Thursday for our Google Meet.